All right, so good evening and welcome. My name is Lisa Connery. I'm the Director of Guidance here at Algonquin. I'm pleased to have Lori Pelletier here with us as one of the MIFA ambassadors to share her knowledge about financial aid with all of you. Now, before we get started, one thing that I just would like to mention quickly about our local scholarship program. So we do have a local scholarship program, and that will become available to students in early February. And we run all of those applications and put all of the scholarships into Naviance. It's an entire electronic process where students can download the applications and complete them and submit them electronically to our administrative assistant, Morgan Bridge. And so as we get closer to the start of our scholarship season, we'll send out information. We do, like a little, video for students on how to access everything, and we will guide you through that. And like we always do, we'll send out reminders to students and parents about the dates and deadlines, okay? So that will become available again at the beginning of February. We time that so that it's also available for students, during the vacation time as well, because I know they're super busy. So at this point, I don't have a lot to add to this presentation. I'm going to turn it over to our expert, Lori, and she's going to give you a lot of great information about the financial aid process, and then she'll be able to take some questions at the end, okay? So enjoy the presentation. Welcome, Lori.
It's great to be back. I haven't been here in many years. We stopped doing these during COVID and everything went electronic, so I'm glad to be doing these because then we can do the Q&A and I can see on your faces whether you're getting the information or not. So I've been doing these presentations for a very long time. I started in financial aid in 1990. So you can start doing the math in your head and figure out how long that is. I've worked at Anna Maria College, Becker College, UMass Medical Center. I did some consulting at different schools. I work for a company now called College Coach, where we coach people through the process. But I'm also a MIFA ambassador. And MIFA has done a great job of trying to educate everyone about the process. There shouldn't be any questions left unanswered because they are there. That's all they're there for is to help you with the process. These are ways for you to connect with MIFA all over social media, and there's a QR code there for their website for other webinars like this, but online that you can sign up for. You can share with other parents if you would like. So, you can just get to MIFA online. MIFA is a quasi-private public state authority that started in about 1982 when the cost of college was going way, way up, and so many families in Massachusetts were wondering, how are we ever going to pay for this? So MIFA has a loan that they offer called a MIFA loan. They also manage the 529 plan, so if you have the U plan or the U fund through Fidelity, MIFA is involved in that. But what they really do is, like I said, try to educate everyone in Massachusetts about, what is available to them, how to access it, where to go for help. They're a great resource. So just remember that. You can always count on them to help you through this process. Tonight we have about an hour of the presentation and then questions and answers. If you don't want to ask your question in public, but just know everyone else has the same question, you can see me afterwards. I'll stick around for a little bit if you have something that's really private you don't want to ask in public. But we will go through the types and sources of financial aid, the application process, how a school makes the decision of who gets their money and how much money they get. We'll actually kind of unveil that decision making, how people actually do pay for college, and then some free resources you might have to tap into if you still need it. So as you may have heard, if you follow any of the Facebook parent groups or anything, the FAFSA form last year was a disaster. I'm so glad I wasn't involved in it, but every single day people would be asking me questions about it. It was just, the rollout was horrendous. I don't know how people didn't get fired all across the board for what they did. But this year, for those of you who have a senior in high school, the process is supposed to be smoother. We have our fingers crossed. They are doing a lot of the right things this year. They are delaying the release of the FAFSA form, the free application for federal student aid, until December 1st. Normally, it's out by now. It usually comes out October 1st. But what they're doing is doing some beta testing to find all the glitches so that December 1st, it will be up and running and run smoothly. So, you know, everyone's aware, and you've heard all the nightmares, but, you know, just know that they are trying to fix it, and there are a lot of resources out there to help you if you do encounter any problems with it. So where does financial aid come from, and what does it really mean? So financial aid is money to help the students pay for college. Everybody knows college is expensive. It can be $6,000 a year to go to Quinsigamond Community College. It could be $38,000 a year to go to UMass Amherst. It could be $90,000 to go to Northeastern BC, BU, Harvard, MIT, Tufts, you name it. So there's all different price levels of college, and most people need help with the price. The help comes in three main forms. Number one, grants and scholarships. That's the good stuff. That's what you want to get the most of. That's the gift aid. That's money that directly reduces your price. Then there's federal work study. Work study is a part-time job on campus where the student earns a paycheck by working usually about 10 hours a week while they're on campus, so that they can buy their books and they can buy their supplies and transportation and maybe eat off campus and things like that. Work study does not reduce your tuition charges. It is something that helps with those other incidental costs, and it helps the student, you know, get involved with working on campus. And then there are federal student loans. Student loans are another thing that's been in the press a lot lately. And when we go over the next slide, everyone will ask, well, how are these people so far in debt if this is all that you can borrow? So student loans are available to any student who completes the FAFSA form. So that's the only requirement, is you have to be eligible and to complete the FAFSA form. And you can borrow freshman year $5,500, pay it back after you graduate. A portion of the loan may be what they call subsidized, which is interest-free while the student goes to school, but not the whole $5,500. And I know you're all going to say $5,500 isn't enough because that school costs a lot more than that. There are a lot of other loans out there above and beyond this, but this is the basic federal student loan that's been around since I went to college and even before that. The unsubsidized portion of the student loan is accruing interest while the student's in school. You can still defer payment until after they graduate, but when you go to pay it back, you're going to owe what you borrowed plus a little bit of interest that's accrued. This is the only loan that's 100% in the student's name. There's no cosigner, there's no credit check. So, you know, that's why they limit how much you can borrow each year. Most students borrow about $27,000 to $30,000 if they go to school for 4 years. That's $27,000 if you add up those columns for each year. Their estimated payment is about $300 a month for 10 years. That's a standard repayment. There are other payment options. They can defer payment if they go to grad school. Some people get forgiveness on their student loan if they become a teacher or work for a nonprofit. The forgiveness is not right away, and it's not across the board. It is after several years of repayment. If you still have a balance and you fall into certain categories, you may be able to get the student loan forgiven. So a lot of families will start with the student loan as a way for the student to have some skin in the game, to have some responsibility. It is one of the lower interest rates out there. This year it's been pretty high. It's at 6.5%. It's always fixed, and the government sets the interest rate each year. We don't know yet what the interest rate will be next year. Those rates will come out in May. We're assuming they will be lower because across the board, interest rates right now are lower than they were last May. So this is something you might see as an offer after doing the FAFSA form. It's something your student will have access to as one of the ways to help pay for school. The other sources of aid come from a variety of sources. So the federal government offers a federal Pell Grant, federal SEOG grant. They fund the work-study program. They fund the student loan program. There are tax incentives from the federal government when you're paying tuition and fees for your child. You may qualify for a tax credit on your federal 1040 tax form. Studentaid.gov is the federal website where you can find all the information about what they offer. As a resident of Massachusetts, your student might qualify for a Mass grant or the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship or a tuition waiver, or there's even a Massachusetts loan that's available, and the website is there for the Massachusetts Office of Financial Aid. So your student might receive some money from the federal government, some money from Massachusetts, and then some money from the college or university, which we call institutional aid. Most colleges will offer grants to students who qualify based on financial need. So if you see a grant as an offer from a school, that's because you qualified based on your income and assets and family size. Whereas if you see a scholarship, that's usually because the student qualified based on grades or athletic ability. So they're both free money, but they're typically based on different things. And just to make it confusing, at the Ivy League schools like at Harvard, when they give you money based on your financial need, they call it a scholarship. And they don't offer scholarships for academic merit, but they do offer a lot of money for needy students, but they call it a scholarship. And then there are lots of other agencies. So as Lisa mentioned, the guidance office here will have local scholarships that the students can win. Those are the scholarships where the student has the best chance of winning them because they're only competing with the other seniors here at Algonquin. So yes, that's still 300 students, but it's better than competing with all the high school kids across America. So make sure you're checking out your local scholarships through Naviance when the time comes, usually around December, January, and the applications are around January, and then they announce the winners at graduation. So your child would know if they won any of the local scholarships from community organizations. There are also national scholarships. Students can search online. I know your seniors are super busy now. They've got AP classes, they've got applications, they've got SAT tests and all these other things. But if they have time to do an online search to try to see which national scholarships they might qualify for, up here we have listed the MIFA pathway and fastweb.com. Those are just two of the search engines. There are a lot of different search engines out there that will walk the student through a series of questions. What's your ethnic background? What's your religion? Did your parents serve in the military? Were you a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout? And it will walk through all the questions and then pull up out of their database a list of scholarships that are a good match for the student. And then the student has to go through that list and figure out which ones they're going to apply to, watch the deadline dates, they're all over the place, and they can have different requirements like an application and an essay and a video and a book report and a science project. So it could be different requirements depending on who's sponsoring the scholarship. If you have younger children, I always recommend doing that national scholarship before senior year. Even as early as sophomore year in high school, you can get started so that you can start working towards winning them. But usually sophomores in high school have more free time than seniors in high school, so they can start to get them done. Overall, about $177 billion of aid was given out in 22-23 from all of these sources. So there's a lot of money out there, and your student might be able to get some of it from all the various ways. Now, merit-based aid, or scholarships or academic scholarships, however you want to talk about it, is it's awarded in recognition of the student's achievements, whether it's academic, artistic, athletic. It might be renewable. The most merit aid comes from the school itself. So a school will offer scholarship, merit aid, or academic scholarship to an incoming freshman who stands out in their applicant pool. When I worked at Anna Maria, our typical student was like a B student. If we had a student come in with grades, in the 3.7, 3.8 GPA, and great test scores, and they were interested in coming to Anna Maria, we would offer them $10,000, $12,000 in a scholarship without looking at their financial aid forms, because we knew that this student was above and beyond what we typically see. They could help us bring our numbers up. They could be a real asset in the classroom. So we use it as a recruitment tool. And all those scholarships from the colleges are typically renewable for 4 years. You'd want to look at what the requirements are to keep it. It's typically a GPA, like a 3.0 or a 3.3. I always share the story. My son went to Northeastern. He had a small scholarship from Northeastern, and it had a 3.0 GPA requirement. He came home at the end of freshman year, sat me down. He said, "Mom, I have a 2.98. He was 0.02 away from renewing his scholarship, but it wasn't his fault. It was a group project, and the professor didn't understand, and all this other stuff. So anyways, look at the renewal requirements, see if it's something you think you can achieve. Occasionally, a school will have a renewal requirement for an academic scholarship that they have to live on campus, or they have to stay in the same major. So you just want to know what you're in for to keep that money. Merit-based aid is not offered at every college. The Ivy Leagues, again, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown, all of them, MIT, Stanford, they don't offer merit scholarships. They don't have to. They get the cream of the crop students from around the globe. They don't have to put any money on the table to entice people to come. They don't offer athletic scholarships either. So you're usually, if you don't qualify for need-based aid at one of those highly selective schools, then you're paying full price. Sometimes there's a separate application or a box to check or an essay to write to qualify for merit aid from the college, so make sure you're checking at each of the schools that your child's applying to. A lot of them will request that you apply early action or do something as early as November so that they can, pick out those candidates early on. So definitely look into that. There is a lot of money out there. It's a matter of crafting your child's list of where they're applying to make sure you're getting some schools. I call them probable, some people call them safety schools, schools where you know your child couldn't get in, has everything that they're looking for, it's just that your child would stand out a little bit more there. My daughter went to a school where it was her safety school, and they offered her a lot of academic merit to go there. And it also meant she was in their honors program. She had great recommendations from her faculty. She graduated top of her class. She was requested to speak at graduation. So if you come in top of your class, not only are you getting money, but you're also going to be top of your class for 4 years. It's going to look great on your resume when you get to the other side. So that's my spiel for that. Need-based aid is based on the family's financial eligibility or financial need. It's determined by a standardized formula that is behind the FAFSA form, and it includes family size, income, assets, and there's a calculation that comes up to evaluate each family's need. Most financial aid is based on need. It's to give the money to the families who need the money to be able to afford school. In order to keep your financial aid, your student has to be maintaining satisfactory academic progress, which is typically a 2.0 GPA, and need-based aid includes grants, loans, and work study. So how do you apply for this need-based aid? So first, let's go over the timeline. As I mentioned, the FAFSA form usually comes out October 1st, but this year it's coming out December 1st. This is the first time you can fill it out. Each school will have their own deadline dates, and they may have different deadline dates depending on how you're applying. Early action, early decision, regular, rolling. There's so many different ways to apply nowadays. So I recommend that the student and a parent keep a Excel spreadsheet or some kind of a chart, the list of the schools you're applying to, what they require for admission, when you got it done, when it was due, and the same for financial aid. Check the website, what's their due dates, did I get it in on time, check it off when it's done. you will be applying for financial aid before you know that you're accepted. So don't wait to be accepted before you apply for aid. So you want to do it kind of at the same time that your child's working on their admission applications, you can work on the financial aid applications. For regular admission, some deadline dates are as late as February or March. So it's not critical to do it today. There's no real rush, but you can check the application deadlines for each of the schools you're looking to. And then on MIFA's website, they have a chart that helps you. It's a downloadable form, an application manager. So that last bullet point there is the website where you can get a chart to fill out to stay on top of it. So the FAFSA form, or the free application for federal student aid, a new one comes out every year. So if you went to the website today, you're going to see last year's form. I've heard from a lot of parents in the last couple of weeks, well, I filled out the FAFSA. I'm like, no, you didn't. You did this year's form. You have to wait till December 1st. There's a small group of students who have been selected to do a beta testing, and that group is already set. So everyone else has to wait until December 1st. It is something you do every year. And you would be filling, if you have a high school senior graduating in 2025, it would be the 25-26 FAFSA form. The student starts the form, and then they invite their parent to fill it out. The parent is called a contributor. Even though the parent may not be contributing money to the student, they're contributing their information to the FAFSA form is what it means. So they will ask the parent to contribute their information. Each person has a separate section, so make sure when you're filling it out that you know what section you're in so that you're not putting in wrong information. The last person to fill out their section submits the FAFSA form. It takes a couple days to process, and then the information will be sent to the schools you tell it to. There is a spot on the FAFSA form to list 20 colleges. In the past, it was 10. And everyone had to go through these different steps to add more than 10, so they finally upped it to 20. So you can list up to 20 schools. Each school has their own federal school ID that you will use to designate that school on the FAFSA form. And there's a little picture there of what the website looks like. So if you go to the website today on studentaid.gov, it's going to show you the 24-25 FAFSA and give a little blurb that the next year's is not coming out until December 1st. In order to sign and submit the FAFSA, you need an FSA ID. This is a login that you're going to create. The student needs one, their parent needs one, and if the parents, if there's two parents filling it out and they're not married, if they're not filing their taxes jointly, then both parents need an FSA ID. You can do that now. So that's something you could do as homework from tonight. You can create the FSA ID now. It has to be created before you complete the FAFSA form. So now's a great time to do it. It takes about 2 to 4 days after you complete it before you can start the FAFSA. You must have your own email address. When I went to do this for my own kids, I'm like, I'm just going to put my email address on everything because I know my kids don't read email. No kids are reading emails these days, and they really need to for this process. So, but that won't work. Each person on the FAFSA form has to have a separate email address. There is a way now for parents without a Social Security number to submit a FAFSA form. They can't create an FSA ID, but they can answer knowledge-based questions about who they are in order to submit without a Social Security number. So the FAFSA FSA ID process basically is saying, are you who you say you are, your Social Security number, date of birth, and you give them a phone number and an email address, and you create a login. Write it down. I know you're not supposed to write passwords down, but it's a real pain in the neck to recreate it if you forget it, so definitely write it down, but keep it in a safe space. So on the FAFSA form, there's not a ton of questions. So many people ask me, is it going to take me 10 hours or 12 hours to fill out? It's usually 30 minutes these days. There's very few questions, and a lot of the information comes over automatically from the IRS from your tax return. So there's general information about student's name, Social Security number, date of birth, address, Are they a US citizen? They list the colleges that they're applying to, so that usually takes the longest time, especially if they have several. You have to find the school and list that on there. And then for the parents, we get a lot of questions about this, whether they're divorced or separated or not living together or what the situation is. If you have married parents, including same-sex parents, you include both parents on the FAFSA form. If all parents who live together, married or not, they get reported on there. So if the parents never married, but they still live together, then you would report both of them. If they are divorced or separated, you have to decide which parent is going to be the parent for the FAFSA form. And it's the parent who provided more financial support in the last 12 months and their current spouse, if they're remarried. And if their support is equal, a lot of people will say that we both, contribute to this child and we both, pay equal amounts, it would be the parent with greater income or assets. It's not necessarily the parent who claimed the child on their tax return. That doesn't have to be the case. Legal guardians are not a parent, so if you are an aunt, uncle, or grandparent who are the legal guardian of the student, your information does not go on the FAFSA form. The number in the household will come over from the, they call it DDX, data transfer from the IRS. So it's the number in the household from the tax return, the number of exemptions. If that's not representative of your household and how many people you have, you can change it. But just know it's going to be pre-populated from your tax return. The number of children in college used to be a question on the FAFSA form, and it used to be taken into account when giving out financial aid, but that's no longer. So it's not going to ask about how many children are in college anymore. The financial information will be the parents and the students, if they filed 2023 income. So whatever you earned in 2023 and filed on your tax return, that's the data that's going to be used. You will consent to have that data pulled from the IRS. And it will pull over both taxable and untaxed income that are on the tax return. So all sources of income on your 1040 are going to come over. It will then ask you to report student assets and parent assets. The assets include savings accounts, checking accounts, investments like mutual funds, stock options, 529 plans, all businesses and farms and other property you might own. It will include, like I said, 529 plans, but 529 plans, if you have any of those, the U Fund or the U Plan or another state's 529, it's reported as a parent asset, not the child's, which is good because parent assets have less of an impact than student assets. So it's good that it's reported there. So don't count it as a student's asset if you have a 529 plan or a Coverdell account. You don't include your primary home, but if you own a second home, a vacation home, a rental property, an investment property, you do have to put how much equity you have in that other property. You do not report your retirement, so any 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, Roth IRA, traditional IRA, you do not report those assets, and you don't report life insurance. If you are receiving child support, the amount of child support you received in 2023 is reported as a parent's asset for the parent who received the child support. Unfortunately, no debt is reported unless it's debt attached to those assets that you're reporting. So if you have a rental property that's worth $500,000 and you owe $200,000 on it, then you would report that it's worth $300,000. So, but you can't include your car loans, your credit cards, your mortgage, things like that. Those things are unfortunately not counted. Now, the FAFSA form may be the only application you have to fill out, but there are about 250 schools that will ask for more than just the FAFSA form. The primary one that they will ask for is the CSS profile form. So Holy Cross, BC, BU, Northeastern, all those more expensive, more selective schools are asking for the profile form. University of Vermont is asking for it. So this is definitely something you want to check with each school that your child is applying to. Do they require the CSS profile form? That form is available now. It's on the College Board website. College Board, the same company that manages the SAT. Your child probably already has a login for the College Board that they can use to start this profile application. This form is not free. The FAFSA form is free, but this one is not. It's $25 for the first school and $16 for each additional school that you list on there. As you're going through the form, if your income is low enough, it will give you a waiver and you won't have to pay when you get to the end. This form is different in two ways from the FAFSA. Number one, it wants all the parents' information. So if you're divorced or separated, and one parent's filling out the FAFSA form, that same parent who completed the FAFSA form will do the profile form, and then there'll be a non-custodial or an additional parent form for the other parent to fill out. And if both parents are remarried, that could be 4 parents' information that is being reported. So your process and your information for the profile is going to be a little different than the FAFSA. The profile also includes home equity. So it's going to ask, what's the current value of your home? What do you owe against it? When did you buy it? What's your mortgage? Things like that. We get a lot of questions about that. If you don't know what your value of your home is, most schools don't want the tax assessment because tax assessments are kind of usually behind a couple years. But if you use a website like Zillow, that might give you an idea. If you had to sell your house in 6 weeks, what price would you put on it? Most schools don't really check unless you really lowball it and you put, your house is worth $150,000. Well, in this area, most houses are not worth $150,000. They're usually worth a lot more than that, and they might look up your zip code, look up your address, and look it up on Zillow. But, so just be, an estimate, but, don't lowball it too much. And some schools are not using the profile form, but they do want to capture some more information, and they may have their own application. So Wheaton College, down 495 here in Massachusetts, Wheaton College came up with their own application that's required in addition to the FAFSA form. So you need, again, to check and see what's required by every school. After you've submitted these applications, the colleges will receive all the data electronically. So nothing's on paper anymore. You can fill out the profile once, you can fill out the FAFSA once. You don't have to do it more than once. It will go automatically to all the schools you list on there. The student will receive what's called an FSS, a FAFSA submission summary, by email. So an important note is that the colleges are going to communicate with the student by email. The FAFSA form is going to communicate with the student by email. We all know the parent's doing most of the work, the parent's paying the bill, but the student is the one who's getting the information. So if you haven't already, you may want to set up an email account for the family or make sure that you have access to your child's email account, or just be cognizant of what email is being reported and if it's being checked on a regular basis. You will have a chance to make corrections to your FAFSA. If you see the summary and you realize you made a mistake, you can go back in and make a correction. You can go back in and add a college. You can also make corrections on the profile form. It's just not as easy as the FAFSA form. You may have to notify each college of changes to your profile form. You'd want to review your applications. So the colleges will receive your data, they'll check to see that the student has been accepted, and they'll start to put together a financial aid offer. So you're not going to get a financial aid offer until the student has been accepted by the admissions office, and then the financial aid will be sent. Sometimes it comes with the admissions decision, especially if you're doing early decision. Oftentimes they will send, you've been accepted through early decision, and here's what we're offering it. You need to make your decision now. And the schools usually will have on their website the date that their awards are going out. If you're applying early action, this is when you'll get your financial aid award. If you've hit all of their deadline dates, this is when they're going to get the information to you. Something else that happens after you've submitted the forms is called verification. Some schools will select your file to be verified. They want copies of your tax returns or your W-2s or both. They may ask you about your home equity value. They may ask you about your bank account value. Mostly it's done that the federal government randomly selects a handful of people to verify their data. The school will notify the student that they have been selected for verification and what documentation is needed. So just to be aware that that might happen. You have to comply with the request or else the student won't get their financial aid. A tax return transcript sometimes from the IRS is asked for. There's a worksheet the student might have to fill out and sign. They may ask for account statements for your assets. So again, make sure that you're reviewing all the correspondence from the college. You don't want to miss out on something because you missed an email. A lot of colleges will use what they call their web portal. So once the student has been accepted to a college, in that same acceptance letter, it will say, here's your email address for us, here's your access to our portal, so that the student can log in and start to see, what am I missing, what documents do you need, what are my next steps? So it's not just one and done, it's something that they have to keep control over. And here's a good point, is to create a family email address for this process so that you see those requests from the school. Don't be afraid of contacting the financial aid office. They're there to help you. They're giving out money. They're not looking to find ways to slap your wrist or raise a red flag. If you have questions about whether the aid you've been offered is renewable, or if it's something that I have to apply for every year, is it automatic, they would answer those questions. If you know your child's getting private scholarships from outside sources, so let's say the Kiwanis Club or the Rotary Club, the Chamber of Commerce, maybe your child's winning a couple $1,000s from these scholarships, you need to notify the school about that. So you'll need to contact the financial aid office and say, okay, we're getting this money from these outside sources. It's going to come in September. Who should we send it to, and how does this affect our financial aid that we've already received? If you have special circumstances, like you've lost your job in the end of 2024, but your 2023 income is what's reported on your financial aid forms, that's a special circumstance you'd want to let the school know about. You want to appeal to the school to take into account your current situation instead of your past situation. So the financial aid office would be able to tell you what forms to fill out, what documentation to send, when they will be reviewing that, and how it might impact the student's financial aid. And all the financial aid offices, they love email. They usually have a chat feature on their website, and they have a phone as well, of course, that you can call. Some people like to stop in and visit the financial aid office at an open house or something like that. It depends on what you're going for. If you're going to demand that they give you more money, most people don't want to be approached on a Saturday at an open house to give more money. So just be cognizant of, they're people too, and they usually can't make that kind of a decision on the spot. It would be better to make an appointment, send documents ahead of time, and maybe, make an appointment to sit down and review those documents. So the financial aid office makes the decisions of who gets the money and how much money they get. The first thing they have to do before they determine how much money you receive is look at what is the cost of attendance for their school. For a typical freshman, what do we charge for tuition and fees, food and housing, books and supplies, transportation, and personal expenses? And they come up with a big number. The green boxes are billed or direct expenses. So tuition fees and food and housing are expenses that the school will bill you for. That's what you're going to pay the school for. The blue boxes are expenses you will incur throughout the year to have your child attend that school, but you're not going to pay the school for that. You're going to pay Amazon or the bookstore or Staples or wherever you're getting your supplies. And then, of course, transportation and personal expenses are just, it's an estimate of what they think the student is going to incur based on historical data of what their typical students spend. When you're looking at schools and comparing the costs side by side, I typically only look at the green boxes because you're going to buy books no matter where you go. You're going to have, maybe my daughter went to school in California, so she had transportation expenses of, we had to fly out there and she flew home for Christmas and things like that. So some schools might have, different transportation expenses depending on where they're located geographically, but for the most part, they're pretty similar, and that's not going to be the factor. It's the tuition fees and food and housing that you want to do an apples-to-apples comparison if you're comparing schools. So the school will create a cost of attendance for your student, and then they will look at your student aid index, or SAI. This number is the results of your FAFSA form. It basically represents your family's financial strength. As compared to the next family. So it's a way, an index, a way to compare families' financial strength against each other. The same federal formula that is used to make the SAI is used for everyone who completes the FAFSA form. So it's not, you're not treated any differently. Everyone's treated the same through that formula. Your income, the parent's income, weighs very heavily into the SAI, much more heavy than assets do. So a lot of families will say, I think I shot myself in the foot by saving so much money in my 529 plan. No, you did the right thing. Your 529 plan is going to be factored in, but not as heavily as you would think. It's your income that has a much bigger impact. Some colleges, especially those who will use the CSS profile form, will have their own institutional formula to give out their own institutional money. So it might come up with a different number than your SAI from the FAFSA form. It is based on the premise that the family has the primary responsibility for paying for college. It's not necessarily what you will pay. Like I said, it's just an index based on this formula. There is a calculator on the MIFA website. So on MIFA.org, you could look up the SAI calculator if you want to know what your student aid index is. So you can run the numbers right there. So then the financial aid office will take the cost of attendance. They will subtract the student's SAI. And what the difference is your financial aid eligibility. So in order to qualify for need-based aid, to qualify for that subsidized interest-free student loan, to qualify for work study, to qualify for need-based grants, your cost of attendance has to be higher than your SAI. So if you go home tonight and go to MIFA.org and do the SAI calculator and it comes out to be $120,000, well, fortunately, none of the colleges cost $120,000 yet, so you wouldn't qualify for need-based aid, even at the most expensive schools, because that SAI is higher than the cost of the school. So that's the basic calculation. So then the next thing the school will do is try to give you a financial aid award to determine how much you're eligible for and try to fill that eligibility. So first they have in this example, we're using a school with a cost of attendance of $45,000, and the family student aid index is $5,000. So the first thing, to cover that $45,000 cost, the first thing that is always considered is what can the family contribute? Well, according to the FAFSA, this family could contribute $5,000. Then the school offered a scholarship for academic merit of $10,000, and then they offered a grant of $17,500. That's free money to help reduce the cost. They then offered the student loan for $5,500 and work study for $2,000. I typically see $2,000 or $3,000 as a typical work study award. That's the maximum the student can earn throughout the school year. So what does that mean? That's all that they had to give. So they did not meet 100% of their need. They only met $40,000, so there's still a $5,000 unmet need. So in order for this family to send this child to this school that cost, and again, this is their total cost, including books and transportation and everything, to send the student to this school, they need to come up with their $5,000 SAI, their $5,000 unmet need. The student needs to work enough hours to earn $2,000, and the student needs to pay back the $5,500 student loan after they graduate. And you're going to see awards like this from every school there, but each one will be different. We'll go through some examples. So we talked about the SAI calculator. There's also what's called a net price calculator. It's an online tool that every college in the country is required by the government to have. So if you have a school in mind, if your child, wants to apply to a school and you're worried about the cost, go to that school's website, search for net price calculator, answer the questions. It is anonymous, so you don't need student social security number or even their name, and answer it as best as you can. It will ask you questions about your 2023 income, your family size, your assets, and it will tell you right then and there, if the student was accepted, this is what you could expect to receive for financial aid, and this is your remaining cost. So it's a great way to get a preliminary view of what the financial picture would be for that school. It won't tell you whether they're going to get accepted or not, but it would tell you financially what you could expect. Some schools might even include merit scholarships in this calculator. If it starts asking you for GPA and test scores and class rank and questions like that, then the calculator is also taking into account whether the student would qualify for a scholarship. So it's a great tool. I highly recommend it, especially as you're still deciding of where you're going to apply. So the next thing that happens is the school sends out their offer letter. Here we have 3 different schools, college A, B, and C. For simplicity, we use the same situation that the school, which is rare, that all 3 schools cost $45,000. This family has a student aid index of 5,000. So their total need-based aid eligibility is $40,000. And you can see the different offers there. The grants and scholarships at each of the schools. The student loan is the same across the board at all the schools. Work study ended up being the same at all the schools, but the total is different. So at College A, they were very generous and they met 100% of the students' need because they gave a lot of grants and scholarships. So there's 0 unmet need at College A. College B, it was 7,000. College C was up to 15,000. And I can tell you from experience that the student is going to love College C, and mom and dad are going to love College A, and maybe you have to kind of make some concessions for College B or something. So, so just be prepared that that could happen, that, the school that you're in love with may not be the most generous school for you, and then how are you going to make that school decision? Is it based on finances, or is it based on something else? And then if you see on the bottom of the screen there, there is a college cost calculator on MIFA as well. Once you start getting your awards, you can put in the information and do side-by-side comparisons. The other thing about financial aid offers is you have to be careful. This is kind of similar to the previous screen with College A, B, and C. And if you look now, it looks like College C is very generous, and all of a sudden you only have 5,000 unmet need at College C. But what they've done is they've added a parent loan, the 3rd line down. And schools are, I don't know how they get away with doing this, we don't agree with it, but it's very confusing for families. There is a huge initiative to really spell out, and I have seen some great financial aid awards from schools that say, okay, here's one whole page, this is what we cost. Here's another page, this is the grants and scholarships we're giving you. And then another page, if the grants and scholarships is not enough, here are some loan options for you. So the loan is just a financing tool. It's not an offer, it's not a financial aid, it's a way to finance the balance. So just be careful when you're reading the offers, and we do have workshops in the spring, So when you start to get your offers, you can attend a MIFA workshop again to see, if you're having difficulty reading or deciphering what they're telling you. So then, after all of that, how do people actually pay for school? So families decide the best way to pay. Schools don't care how you pay as long as you pay on time. So you can pull from your savings, you can pull from your cash flow and join a payment plan, you can take a loan, but you do have to pay before the start of each semester. So in this example, there was a balance due to the school of $20,000. The student had some savings, they chipped in and paid. The parent had some savings that they put together to pay. And then from their current wages, the parents joined a payment plan and paid $5,000 over the length of the school year, paying monthly payments. Most colleges, I would say almost every college has a payment plan, whether for the year or for the semester. They charge a small fee to join the payment plan, but they don't charge any interest on your outstanding balance. One thing that I found out firsthand, I had twins that went to college at the same time, and my cash flow changed dramatically because they were not eating in my house anymore. I was not driving them around. I was not going to basketball tournaments up and down the East Coast. You're spending a lot on your child already, usually about $1,000 a month. So when they're off at college, yes, you have this big college bill on one hand, but you probably have some money per month that you could redirect towards the college, whether putting it into savings for future bills or on a payment plan. And then in this situation, they still had to borrow a loan for $10,000. Most people think that college is a big investment. It's an investment for the future, just like you might invest in your home and take a mortgage, or buy a car with a loan to finance it over several years. So it's very common for people to finance a loan to help pay for college. Except for that subsidized student loan that we talked about earlier, all these loans that are available for college are accruing interest while the student's in school. Most of them will allow you to defer payment if you want, but they might charge you a higher interest to delay making payments. So if you can pay off the loan or start to pay off the loan while the child's in school, that would get you a better interest rate. So a lot of these things we've probably already talked about, but some things to think about at the kitchen table conversations. I know this time of year it's probably talking about college and their applications and how senior year going, but think about, what is the school's net price? Now you have a calculator to do that. What's the first step for the right step for the student, really evaluating where does the student want to go, where will they be the happiest. Where the student might be the happiest and the most successful may not be where the parent wants the student to go. So trying to get on the same page, curating a balanced college list, using some of the resources in Naviance to say, okay, let's be realistic here. Where does my child have a chance of getting accepted? Are we going to put all our eggs in one basket to try to get to this really elite school when we have a very little chance of getting accepted? Or should we have other schools on the list? Consider your other children or how many years until the next child goes to college. College is usually 4 years, sometimes even more. And what about grad school? Nowadays, a lot of professions need a graduate degree. So don't look at just freshman year and how are we going to get through to pay for freshman year. Let's look at the whole 4-year endeavor and the other children in the family. Looking at your total debt. And then definitely, does the college have the services? This is, a financial topic, but a lot of students today are on IEPs or need specific assistance in various ways. Does the college that your child's applying to have all those services that you need for their learning styles? And maybe a gap year or a community college would be, a good way to start financially and academically. This slide here is dedicated 100% to college in Massachusetts. One of the newest things that came out is community college is free in Massachusetts. So your child could get an associate's degree, a 2-year degree, totally for free in Massachusetts, and then transfer to another school to finish off and get their bachelor's degree. When they put their resume together and go out job hunting, the recruiter is not going to ask, where did you start? They're going to say, where did you finish? Where did you most recently graduate from? So, if some of these numbers scare you, if the cost of college is out of reach, or, the student doesn't know what they want to do and they want to try some different academic majors, maybe try some online classes, maybe, try living away from home but going to a community college. So there's a lot of different resources in Massachusetts for people who need them. And then these are just some of the free resources. We have a FAFSA day in Massachusetts where you can actually go, and someone like myself or other financial aid people will sit down with you and complete the FAFSA form. So even if you've done it all at home and you don't want to hit the submit button, you want someone to review it, the FAFSA Day Massachusetts. So that website is up there to register for one of the events. Mass EdCo is a great resource that is very helpful for all kinds of students. And then the MIFA pathway has a lot of information for grades 6 through 12. This is just about staying on track for senior year. So for those of you who have seniors, you're right in the thick of it. You can see fall of senior year is the bullet that has the most, the section that has the most bullets. It's a very busy time. But this might help you to check off some of the things you've already done, some of the things you might not have thought of, some of the things you've got to get on the calendar. But it's a very busy time throughout this. In winter of senior year, you'll be submitting all the applications. You might have to send in mid-year grade reports for admission. You'll be applying for private scholarships in the winter. And in the spring, you'll start to receive all of your notifications from the schools of their admissions and their financial aid office. If you have a unique financial circumstance, that would be the time to go back to the school sometime in like February, March, and say, listen, things have changed. If someone's lost their job or they no longer get bonuses or overtime, if your finances are a lot less now than they were in '23, that's a good thing. If you have a grandparent living with you who wasn't living with you before, or you have another family member in the house, there's a lot of different things that can change. If you have excessive medical or dental bills, that's something the schools would consider. So those are considered a financial aid appeal. That would happen usually after the first of the year. I also recommend negotiating if you get a merit offer. So let's say your child's accepted to Assumption College and Stonehill College, very similar schools of academic criteria. And Stonehill gave your child $15,000 and Assumption gave your child $10,000 in an academic scholarship. You can go back to Assumption and say, listen, we love your school, we've been to visit, you're my first choice. I have a better offer from Stonehill, but I really want to go here. Can you increase my offer? We've found through some of the data we collect that about 60% of the time, schools will come back with more money, and it's usually about $2,000. So for an email to the admissions office, you get $2,000 a year more. It's crazy. It's usually the private schools who are more willing to negotiate and kind of have some wiggle room there than the public schools. And it doesn't always work, but it's definitely worth a try. Just like when you're buying a car, you're probably not going to accept the first price they give you. You're going to ask for a lower price. So just make them think that you really want to go there, that you have. It's hard to do if you don't have better offers. Some schools will ask to see those other offers. So just something to think about. And again, MIFA is around if you have questions about doing that. You'd want to wait until you have your offers, but before you make a decision. You have to make a decision by May 1st. So if you've paid a deposit to a school, it's much harder to go back and negotiate because they already know that you paid a deposit and that you're coming. So you'd want to try to negotiate before you pay a deposit. So this is just some QR codes of things you can do now. Get your FSA ID for the student and the parents. Complete the CSS profile if it's required for the schools that you're applying to for admission. Research the deadlines and the required applications. And then you can register for other MIFA webinars and get the timeline that we put together. And you can also sign up for MIFA emails where you'll just be on an email distribution list. We don't overload you. It's usually like 2 a month at this time of year, just reminders and links to things that might be helpful based on where you are in the process. And then you can connect with MIFA all these ways. That was in the beginning as well. So you can follow us on all the social medias. And then you can also call MIFA or email them. And I know that was a lot of information for a Thursday night. But I'm going to open it up to questions now. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask? Yes, with waving. Good question. She wanted to know what date your assets are based on. It's as of the day you fill out the form. Again, you don't have to be super specific. You know, if you have an average balance throughout the month, you know, you just paid your mortgage or you just made your car payment, I would just do an average amount that you have. It doesn't have to be specific to the day, but yeah, the wording on the application is as of today, what is the balance of your checking savings account? And, you know, your investments, everyone knows that goes up and down by the minute, so it's hard to pin down. So that's a good question, too. She asked if we recommend paying down your mortgage. In some cases, that works out. So if you have, you know, more money than you typically have in your checking account, and you're like, maybe I should make a big lump sum payment to my mortgage so my checking account goes down. That works well unless you're applying to schools that use the CSS profile, because then it's a wash, because your checking account went down, but the equity in your home went up. So that's how they kind of get you there. But if you're applying to FAFSA-only schools, it could make sense. I would definitely do a net price calculator first before moving any money around or doing anything drastic, so you know, is this going to impact me? For a lot of people, the parent's income is putting them out of the ballpark for financial aid at most places, so it doesn't make sense to worry about what assets you have. And so I'll answer the question now, even though it wasn't asked. There isn't a set cutoff for your income, because there's a lot of factors that go into the equation, but typically if the parent's adjusted gross income for 2023 is more than $300,000, then they don't qualify for financial aid, even at a very expensive school. So at a $300,000 income level for the parents, your SAI, Student Aid Index, is probably gonna be 75 to 80,000. And it, you know, so the higher you get above 300,000, it's gonna go even higher. On top of that 75 to 80,000 from your income is going to be some portion of your assets as well. The parents' assets are factored into the formula at about 5%. So if you have $100,000 in the bank or $100,000 in a 529 plan, that's going to increase your student aid index by $5,000. So it reduces your financial aid eligibility by $5,000. So some people, you know, if they know they have a ton of assets, just doing that calculation, 5% of your assets, and keep in mind your retirement assets don't count. So it's just your liquid assets. Yes? Right. So his question was regarding early decision. How does a school factor in your financial aid for early decision if the FAFSA form doesn't come out till December 1st, but you apply so early and you're going to find out early? Most early decision schools require the CSS profile. So they're going to use that form to do a preliminary award. It will get adjusted a little bit if your FAFSA form comes in very different than your profile form, or they'll have their own application to use, or they will delay your offer until like January 15th and give you a couple days to decide. So if finances are a big decision for, you know, a big deciding factor in the college choice, Early decision is limiting for you, because early decision means if you get accepted, you have to go. You know, you've made all your decisions. This is your first choice school. You want to go there. If I get accepted, I'm going to go. So you would definitely want to do a net price calculator at a school where you're applying early decision to make sure that that number is okay with you. I would even print it out so that if you don't get the amount of money that the net price calculator showed for when you're accepted early, you have something to go back and fight about and contest it. Finances are the only reason you can get out of early decision, but it's still very much frowned upon, and they can drag it out, you know. They can say, you know, well, we have our net price calculator. You could have used that before you made this big decision. You knew what you were going to get. So, and it doesn't look good for the high school, doesn't look good for the student, doesn't look good for anybody. Yeah. Yes?
So, once we apply, we know what we're paying for the first year. What happens when we get to the second year? We have to reapply for everything?
It starts all over again. Yes. Right. So people worry about bait and switch, you know, where maybe freshman year I'm going to get all this money. How do I know when I'm going to get sophomore, junior, senior year? I'd say 99% of the schools are pretty legitimate that they would keep it as much the same as they can. But if the parent's income keeps going up, then you could get less and less. We do see some schools where you noticed on the loan chart, you get $5,500 in a student loan freshman year. By junior and senior year, you're getting $7,500. The other factor in the equation is that the school is usually increasing their prices year after year, usually about 3%. So as the student goes through the 4 years of college, their financial aid might change a little bit, where it becomes more loan heavy than grant heavy. And that's why merit aid is nice, because merit aid is there as long as the student maintains their GPA. It's not factored on the parent's income. So, but if you think your family's situation is staying pretty stable financially, then you would get the same every year. Yeah, except for those little factors of losing merit aid because the student didn't meet the GPA, or, you know, things like that. Yep.
The student loans that the college offers, or I think it said parent loans, those in the parent's name? Okay, so we're
Right.
responsible for paying it back?
Yes, so for loans other than the student loan, that's 100% in the student's name but has those maximums, there are parent plus loans from the federal government. The parent is the borrower, either parent can borrow. There's a quick credit check, it's very easy to get approved, you just can't have a bankruptcy or foreclosure in your history. They're not looking for a specific credit score. You can borrow as much as you need to cover the cost for 1 year. But it is 100% in the parent's name, so legally the student's not obligated to pay it. There are other loans from private banks where the student is the borrower and the parent's the cosigner, or another adult is the cosigner. Those, they're both on the loan, the student and the cosigner, so it's both of their responsibilities to repay it. But if, let's say you cosign for your child and you're expecting them to pay it and they don't, it can ruin your credit. So you got to be careful about what you borrow, yeah. And MIFA does have a loan that's like that. It's called a family loan, so the student and the parents are on it, and it's a 15-year repayment, and they set the interest rates each year. Usually the MIFA loan has a lower interest rate than what the federal government's offering for parent loans, so it's a good comparison. I'm sorry, what was that? The student loan, yes, there are limitations to the amount each year. It starts out at $5,500 as a freshman, and it only goes up to $7,500 as a senior. Once they're in grad school, they can borrow the full thing on their own for graduate school, so that's where you see a lot of people get into trouble with having a lot of debt. So the student loan is limited. The other loans on the market pretty much say it's what the cost of attendance for the school is, minus any financial aid you've already received. So you can borrow, if you need 50,000, you can request 50,000. Occasionally, we'll see a bank, like Citizens Bank is a big student loan lender, but the student needs a cosigner. They may look at your credit and say, okay, you're requesting 50,000, but based on what you already owe, we're only going to let you borrow 40. Or we'll let you borrow the 50, but we're going to give you an 11% interest rate. They'll make it unattractive. So, did you have a question? In the middle? Yeah. Yes.
So when we get the offer letter from the school, is that typically, will we see how much it is for all 4 years or only for the first year?
Only for the first year, you'll see on the offer letter, yeah. Because the school doesn't know what their cost is going to be for the second year. And the school doesn't know what the federal government and the state of Massachusetts is offering for aid for the second, third, and fourth year. You can kind of guess that it's going to be similar, or maybe 5% more between, maybe losing some aid, but also having price increases for the school. But yeah, you're kind of going in blind, unfortunately, yeah. All right, well, if there's no other group questions, I want to thank you for your time and wish you all good luck, and I'll stick around if anyone has any private questions. Thanks.